My vampire, my vampire brother's keeper, chapter 5, proper sex. I got hold of the wheelchair before dragging it along. It was 4 hours past noon, and despite the time the sun was blistering hot, the gravel path made it far more difficult for me to pull the wheelchair. We said nothing for half an hour, nor was I interested in conversing. I wanted to finish my errand and be done with it. Even this guy had proven to be more trouble than he was worth. We arrived at the Gallera tobacco plantation, and his slaves were in the middle of weeding and bud removing of the crops. Slavery had been abolished in Spain in 1811. It, however, persisted in Cuba due to the thriving tobacco and sugar industry. The ban was never enforced since there was a financial incentive for slavery to continue. I lowered my eyes since I could not stand seeing people suffering, and I was too much of a coward to say or do anything about it. I focused my gaze on the back of the man I was dragging about on the wheelchair, and his free hand was clasped around his shoulder almost as if it was cold. I extended my hand to touch the delicate hand, but he flinched away. Seeing Valerio looking so vulnerable made me question whether he was truly a vampire or not. Perhaps this was all an act he used to keep us at arm's distance since he felt threatened. It made sense that he would be afraid. After all, here he was in an unknown land with serious injuries, being forced to depend on the kindness of strangers. And we found the man we were looking for rotting away in the stocks, and it was a miracle he hadn't died after rotting away for 5 days. I moved the wheelchair to allow Valerio to face the man who had saved his life. You survived, said the slave happily. I'm sorry, said Valerio apologetically. Oh, this it's not your fault, said the slave, giving a sheepish smile. I was running away when I happened to chance upon you. You still got caught because I slowed you down. You should have let me die, said Valerio bitterly. I couldn't tell if he was sad about the slave situation or if he was bitter about being in the world of the living. The capataz eventually took notice of us, and by now everyone was familiar with the existence of the blonde patient rotting away in Ciaran's clinic, and the capataz fancied that maybe the stranger wanted to buy the unruly slave, so he went to inform the master about the prospective buyer. And Gallera graced us with his presence, and like most of the locals, he was curious about the blonde man. And Gallera was a poorly bought, green old man with icy blue eyes. Nobody liked him. I didn't like him either, and his last wife had hung herself rather than put up with him for another year. At least this was the official excuse. Frankly, I think he murdered his wife, and according to the rumors, he was on the prowl for a new victim, or wife as he liked to call them. Gallera saw me staring daggers at him, and he had a hearty laugh, and smiling with his false teeth, he said, I have been told that you desire to buy my Ernesto. Are you for sale, Ernesto? Asked Valerio coolly. Ernesto said nothing. He didn't have permission to speak freely. Gallera smiled coolly on seeing that his slave had finally learned his lesson, or maybe he was thinking a new sadistic way of punishing the poor man. Well, answer the question, boy. Are you for sale? Insisted Gallera, poking the slave in the face with his walking cane. That is for my master to decide, said Ernesto, lowering his eyes. How much do you want for him? I asked, taking control of the situation. It depends on how much you have, asked Gallera. I had nothing on me. The doctor took everything I had, said Valerio in a defeated tone. I can pay what you are owed as soon as I become ambulatory. And how much do you think I should be owed? Said Gallera, negotiating. This isn't an ordinary slave. Ernesto's my flesh and blood, and you're going to be paying for half a white man. Then he probably is only going to be half as expensive, said Valerio, sneering. Gallero laughed heartily after wiping a tear from his eye. I take it you're an abolitionist? I have been called many things, said Valerio coolly. You may believe what you will as far as my person is concerned, but if you must trust in one thing, is that I'm going to give you what you are owed as soon as I'm able to stand on my own 2 feet. Let's shake to that then, said Gallera, extending his hand. Valerio took the hand and he shook it, and in one swift motion he put Gallera towards his person, and he then opened his mouth wide before ripping out his throat. You know, like the vampire, he ripped out the evil slave owner's thread. Blood everywhere. Gallera staggered while he held his hand to his neck. And Valerio had bitten off the jugular. You know, like the vein that has most of the blood. And by the time help could arrive, it was going to be too late. Valerio staggered to his feet and he removed a hair clip from his hair to pick the lock. And there was so much blood, and fears keeping my feet planted on the ground. Ernesto stretched his limbs before moving his stiff neck left and right, and he went to examine his father. The man looked dead. He looks dead. Valerio made a motion to return to the wheelchair, but his feet failed him. Ernesto carved Valerio before he fell, and he gently placed the blood man back on the chair. Valerio breathed a sigh of relief before licking his bloody chops. Oh God, he really is a vampire. Ernesto took his father's hand. Does he have a pulse? Is he still alive? Ernesto turned pale and he walked around his dead father thinking. He saw a white man by the porch lowering his book, and he was standing up and walking towards us. Ernesto responded by picking up a machete, and he pointed the weapon towards the white man, who took a step back. Ernesto proceeded to hack away at his father's neck until he dislodged the head completely. He held up the severed head before pointing to the witness with his machete. By the looks of it, he was planning to take the blame for Valerio's action. The witness ran away like the devil was after him, and some of the black slaves did the same, but for other reasons. And it was their chance to flee. And with most of the witnesses gone, Ernesto breathed a sigh of relief, and he dropped the severed head unceremoniously, and then he stood before Valerio while scratching his head nervously. What the hell were we supposed to do now? Ernesto and I took Valerio to the nearby river, and we removed his jaw, his shirt, and his arm bracer. We cleaned out the blood as best we could, and I couldn't help but marvel at the physical specimen. And Valerio was built like a Michelangelo's David, or rather his Pieta Jesus. And he only looked fragile because he was shrunk into his frame, and he used a shawl to guard his sensitive skin. And after doing this, Ernesto ran towards the wood to disappear from sight, and if we were lucky, this would all blow over. I saw Valerio licking his finger as one would normally do after having a tasty meal. And every time he opened his mouth, I would see his ghastly canines. And Valerio saw me looking at him, and he grew saddened, and his body was overcome by a trembling fit. He was either afraid or very cold from wearing a white shirt, and despite a best effort, his shirt was still stained with blood. I have an idea, said Valerio, and he then clawed at the stitches of one of his bullet wounds, and this caused it to bleed profusely. Now we have a way to explain away the blood. No, stop enough, you lunatic, I said, taking hold of his hand. And Valerio gave me a sheepish look, the type of look a naughty child gives when they know they did something wrong. I fastidiously cleaned the bloody hand before placing a cloth on top of the open wound, and since I had no way of closing the self-inflicted wound, I rushed back to the clinic with my charge. What the hell happened? Barked Dorothy, running towards us. The stitches opened up, said Valerio dryly. Right, said Dorothy flatly, and she picked up Valerio's hand to examine his index finger, and the lower part of his nail was stained with fresh hot blood. Sure they did. The woman swiftly wheeled her patient to his bedroom, and she immediately returned with her hook and thread, and she re-stitched the wound while pulling a little too hard on the skin, and it was painful just to looking at it. It was a wonder why Valerio didn't flinch or cry, and Dorothy was about to interrogate us, but she was distracted by the lady's arrival. As soon as she left, I breathed a sigh of relief. I'm sorry you had to see that, said Valerio, sighing wearily. I wish I could say that I accept his apology, but I cannot. That was the first person I saw die right before my eyes, and I could have done without that experience. Once I'm able to walk, I will take the first boat out of Cuba, and I wish I could leave sooner, but Dr. Ciaran won't let me leave the clinic until I am well enough. And as I am now, I do not have the strength to do as I will. Where will you go? I asked. Al carajo if I'm lucky. Or maybe to hell. Said Valerio. I had nothing or nothing inviting me to any location. And your parents? I asked. My mom died of an illness when I was 6, and my father croaked 2 years later, said Valerio. I had friends, but they betrayed me. Now you're all caught up. What is the last country that you visited? I insisted. Cuba, said Valerio. And where were you born? I asked. Florida, said Valerio. And can you help me rise? I need to use the bathroom. Oh, sorry. And you must have been rotting in that chair for hours, I said, ending my interrogation. And little by little, I am learning new things about my new, well, it's a little bit too early to call him a friend. I find his company agreeable, know that isn't it. He's pitiful and he's hurt, and I feel sorry for him. Therefore, I am compelled to be nice to him. And I pulled the chair towards the bathroom, and with great effort he rose, and he limped on one leg before reaching the toilet, and I waited patiently outside the bathroom for him to finish his business. And so I wasn't smelling or hearing anything, I knocked on the door. I am fine, just let me have my privacy, said Valerio with a trembling in his voice. And I placed my head against the door, and I heard quiet sobbing. The poor man probably doesn't want me to see him cry. It is shameful for a grown man to cry. And considering his grim circumstances, it was understandable for him to engage in such a weakness. Dr. Ciaran entered the room to check upon his patients. So how was the visit? Asked Dr. Ciaran. Uneventful, I lied. So you went there when Ernesto locked off his father's own head, as Ciaran, not believing a word I said. Well, we paid to get the guy released, and 5 seconds later he was dead. So we went back to the clinic, I said, giving a half-truth. Some of the blood splattered on Valerio, so he's a little shaken. Go easy on him. Dr. Ciaran opened the bathroom door with his key, and sure enough, there was Valerio quietly sobbing, and I stood there uncertain about what I was supposed to do. Can you go to the laundry and get me some clean clothing? Asked Dr. Ciaran. I roamed about the clinic in search for the laundry, and I went to look about the clothing being dried under the sun, and I felt about until I found a clean shirt and pants that looked to be Valerio's size. And I delivered the clothing before lingering by the door, and Valerio was carefully dressed in clean linen, and once he was comfortable in bed, the doctor allowed me to depart. And I went to hang out with my friends, and the siblings chatted much while I said very little, and once again Laura reminded me to deliver her letter, and I looked at the address over the top, and after walking a little I realized that the address was my home. Even though it didn't have my name on it, the letter was clearly for me. And I went to my room to read the letter, and I do not know what I expected to find. Alas, much to my disappointment. Alas, I was disappointed to discover that Valerio was only interested in Valerio. Bye-bye.